Hello and welcome back to the Roundup. It is Friday, October 24th, 2025, and this is our 20th episode. And for this one, we're trying something a little new. We are going visual. Hopefully, these slides will help us break down all the big stories of the week in a whole new way. Let me know what you think. And man, this week was a real roller coaster. On one hand, we saw Canada just pouring a massive amount of money into research, which is absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, we're seeing some pretty serious cracks in our security start to show. We're going to connect that to the global tech arms race, look at a pretty wild story about academic fraud, and then wrap it all up with the one thing that seems to tie everything together these days, AI. So let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with some seriously good news. Canada really opened up the national wallet this week, making some huge investments in research and innovation. It feels like a real statement of intent, you know? Just let that number sink in for a second. Over $690 million. I mean, this is not pocket change. The federal government is making a huge bet on Canadian brainpower. This is the kind of funding that can genuinely shift the entire landscape of research in this country. So where is all this cash actually going? Well, it's a really strategic mix. A huge chunk of it, $482 million, is going to the foundational stuff, the less glamorous but absolutely critical things like indirect costs and, importantly, beefing up cybersecurity. Then you've got almost $200 million dedicated to attracting and keeping top talent in everything from AI to indigenous governance. And they're not forgetting the tools either. Millions are going into new infrastructure, with Concordia University getting a nice $4.35 million boost for some key projects. They're really trying to build a complete ecosystem here. And you know, this isn't just about the numbers. It's about the people. This quote right here, it says it all. For decades, the story was always about Canada's brain drain to the south. While now, it's a brain gain. The Canada Leads program is actively poaching top talent from around the world. There was this great story about a cancer researcher who fled funding cuts in the US and is now thriving up in Toronto. That's not just a nice story, it's proof that the strategy is actually working. Okay, so we're building this amazing multi-million-dollar house on the world stage. But here's the question. Did we remember to lock the doors? Because all this investment, all this success, it just makes Canada a much bigger target. So let's take a look at where we might be a little vulnerable. This slide pretty much captures the entire problem perfectly. On one hand, we absolutely love the idea of open, collaborative ocean research. But the trouble is, a new federal report is pointing out that we've been so focused on sharing that we kind of forgot about security. I mean, think about it. Detailed maps of our seabed, the technology we use for underwater surveillance, that's a gold mine for other countries. We're basically leaving the blueprints out on the front lawn. And this vulnerability isn't just at sea, it's also in the air, especially up in the Arctic. Experts are sounding the alarm that foreign ships could be launching these small, low-flying drones that just slip right under our radar. NORAD is looking for giant missiles, right? Not something the size of a pizza box buzzing over the ice. It's a huge blind spot, especially when we know that some of those research vessels are probably collecting data for a little more than just science. So here's the irony. We're winning the battle for top-tier researchers, but are we about to lose the war for our future talent? While we're celebrating this brain gain, universities in New Brunswick just saw an 11% drop in international students. And this is a direct consequence of the new federal cap on study permits. This isn't just a number, it's a real warning light for the future health of our entire academic system. Of course, all these Canadian issues, our investments, our vulnerabilities, they're not happening in a bubble. They're playing out on a global stage, where the competition for technological dominance is getting fiercer by the day. So let's zoom out and see what the other players on the board are doing. You don't have to look any further than the race for quantum computing. The US is so concerned about China's progress that it's actually thinking about redirecting money from its massive CHIPS Act just to prop up its own quantum companies. And the fear is real. Whoever wins this race could potentially break every form of encryption we currently use. So this isn't just about faster computers, it's a battle for the future of secure information itself. And that sense of intense competition is just as fierce over in Europe. This quote from the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, is a really stark warning. She's pointing to how China came to dominate the solar panel market through heavy subsidies and is basically telling the EU, we cannot let that happen again with our green tech industry. It really is a cautionary tale about economic sovereignty. So in this global tech war, how do you defend your territory? Well, one answer is you build a fortress of patents. And right now, France is Europe's master builder. They are responsible for an incredible 40% of all patents coming out of public research. That is not an accident. It's a clear national strategy to turn bright ideas into protected assets before anyone else can. Okay, so we've gone from state-level competition, and now we're going to narrow our focus to a much more insidious threat, this growing crisis of integrity within the research system itself. Yeah, we're talking about fraud, fakes, and sometimes outright espionage. This next story is just wild. And honestly, it's a little scary. An expose this week uncovered a whole industry of what they call paper mills in China. And these aren't universities. They're literally factories for academic fraud. They prey on researchers who are desperate to publish, and they sell them everything: fake data, fake authorship, you name it. One firm alone was churning out 180,000 papers a year. This isn't just a few bad apples. This is poisoning the well of science on an industrial scale. And sometimes the deception is just, well, bizarre. Over in India, police arrested a man for impersonating a top nuclear scientist from the prestigious Baba Atomic Research Center. He was using fake IDs, traveling the world, meeting with foreign nationals, apparently just for the thrill of playing a secret agent. It's a really strange case, but it highlights just how easily identities can be faked to gain access and credibility. This threat also plays out inside major corporations. Just take a look at Nexperia, the Dutch chipmaker that's owned by China's Wingtech. A leaked letter showed Chinese management ordering staff to completely ignore Dutch government oversight. This is a direct clash between corporate ownership and national security, a struggle for control over critical semiconductor technology happening right on European soil. So, is anyone fighting back against all this fraud? Well, yes, but it is tough. After a single paper mill got 55 papers published using 26 completely fake author names, big publishers like Springer Nature are finally cracking down on identity verification. They're rolling out new tools to make sure researchers are who they say they are. But as the experts point out, it's basically a game of whack-a-mole. As long as the pressure is to publish or perish, the fraudsters will always find new ways to play the system. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most complex topic of the week. It's a technology that is woven through all of these different issues, from security to fraud, and that's artificial intelligence. A new report from CIRA dropped a bombshell statistic this week. Last year, nearly half of all Canadian organizations were hit with a cyber attack. That is a staggering number. And what's the engine making these attacks more sophisticated and more widespread? You guessed it, it's AI. The report uses this excellent sword and shield analogy to explain AI's dual role. For hackers, it's a sword. It lets them scale up their operations, create super convincing phishing scams with fake voices and images, and find vulnerabilities faster than ever. But for the defenders, it's a shield, a powerful tool for detecting and responding to those very same threats. It's a full-on technological arms race. So AI is this incredibly powerful tool, but what happens when we start treating it as a source of truth? That's where things get really, really dicey. A huge global study just found that when you ask AI chatbots about the news, they get it wrong 45% of the time. Almost half the time, they are confidently, completely incorrect. And the study breaks down how they get it wrong. A third of the time, they just invent their sources out of thin air. And a fifth of the time, the information is just plain inaccurate. As more and more people turn to these tools instead of a regular search engine, they are quickly becoming one of the biggest drivers of misinformation on the planet, threatening the very idea of shared facts. And that's really the thread that connects everything we've talked about today, isn't it? Whether we're trying to protect our research, or spot a fake paper, or compete on the world stage, we're relying more and more on AI. But if the very tool we're using to find the truth is itself unreliable, how do we tell what's real anymore? And that's the big question this week leaves us with. That's all for the Roundup. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.